Okay, next we're going to be talking about the excretory system, also called the urinary system. So, the functions of the kidney are basically their filtration. So, they filter about 200 liters of blood every day and allow toxins, metabolic waste, and excess ions to leave the body in urine. They regulate the volume of your blood and the chemical makeup of your blood. And they maintain the proper balance between water and salts and acids and bases. And they're protected by a layer of fat, but they're not really protected by any bone. So the bottom of your rib cage ends just above it, so they can be easily damaged if you were to hit them or anything. But they're extremely important, and you cannot live without them. So if you were to have total kidney failure, you would quickly die if you didn't have ongoing dialysis or something else that cleans your blood for you. So other functions include gluconeogenesis. So this is the formation of glucose. So if you were in a period where you didn't eat for long periods of time, your kidneys could actually make glucose, release it into your bloodstream so that it could get to your cells and your cells could have energy. Of course, it's very limited. It couldn't do that forever, but it could do it for periods of fasting. It also helps produce renin to help regulate blood pressure, and erythropoietin, which helps stimulate red blood cell production. So your overall blood pressure is greatly affected by the functioning of your kidneys, because if your blood volume is really high, maybe your kidneys aren't filtering out everything, and so it's causing your blood volume to be high and your blood pressure to be high, and vice versa. It also helps activate vitamin D. Okay, other organs of the urinary system include the urinary bladder, which stores urine until it's ready to be excreted. You've got ureters, which transport urine from the kidneys to the bladder, and the urethra transports urine from the bladder out of the body. And your bladder also has a sphincter muscle, which helps to seal off the urethra until you are ready to urinate. So the internal anatomy of the kidney, so you've got, so you see here in the picture, you've got an outer cortex. So this, the capsule, this is what I want to start with. It's a very dense, kind of fibrous outer layer, so it makes the kidney very tough. And if you have found your cat kidney yet, and you feel that cat kidney, it's very hard. It almost feels like a rock or something. And that's that capsule that helps protect the kidney, as well as a layer of fat. Just inside the capsule is the part called the cortex. And then you have the individual pyramids that you see there. And then the calyx starts draining the so within these pyramids are all the parts that do the filtering themselves. And then it drains down into the calyx. These are kind of like collecting ducts. And then it all kind of drains downward and filters down to the bladder once it's all filtered. And you've got blood entering the kidneys through the renal artery and leaving through the renal veins. So the major calyces are large branches of the renal pelvis, and they collect urine draining from the papillae, and then the urine flows through the pelvis and ureters to the bladder. Approximately 1/4 of the systemic cardiac output flows through the kidneys each minute. So those arteries that lead to the kidneys are pumping a lot of blood through those kidneys so they can be nice and filtered. Now, the nephron is the structural and functional unit of the kidney. This is what forms the urine. These are extremely important because this is where all the filtration is happening. So we begin up here at the glomerulus. This is a ball of capillaries that is coming from, you can see it's coming from that renal artery. So it's feeding into this tiny little ball of capillaries. And the filtrate, so the stuff that needs to be filtered, will be pushed out into the Bowman's capsule. So it's kind of this blind-ended cup that surrounds the glomerulus. So you can kind of follow the order of the arrows here. Then it's going to go through the proximal tubule, Then it's going to filter down. So you can see how those veins here are wrapped around this loop of Henle. Okay, so that's allowing things that your body wants to reabsorb are reabsorbed here, and other parts will go on and continue to be kept inside the nephron. So the most important thing that the kidney does is that it puts some things back into the bloodstream, but keeps some things out of the bloodstream. So your urine should only have the stuff that is supposed to be filtered out. So it continues up the loop of Henle, and then it'll eventually head to the distal tubule, which is right around here, which then heads down towards the collecting duct. And all this, again, through each of these steps, you've got ions and wastes, different things being collected in, or it's other things that you need going back into the bloodstream. The renal corpuscle is what is the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. So these two things together become known what is the renal corpuscle. The glomerular endothelium allows solute-rich, virtually protein-free filtrate to pass from the blood into the capsule. The proximal convoluted tubule reabsorbs water and solutes from the filtrate and takes it back into the blood. Okay, so for the most part, you want water and a lot of other solutes to go back into the bloodstream. And the loop of Henle, so this is that big loop down here. It's kind of like this hairpin loop. They always describe it as a hairpin loop. Functions to concentrate urine to regulate fluid retention. So if you were really dehydrated, in this loop of Henle, this is where all the water is going to be reabsorbed back into your bloodstream. So when you urinated, your pee is going to be like a really dark yellow color. If you've got excess water, like you've been drinking a whole bunch of water, then it doesn't need to keep all of it, and it'll go ahead and excrete the excess water into your urine, so your urine is going to be very light colored, maybe even clear if you've been drinking a lot of water. So it's about maintaining that balance. You don't want too much water or too little water. And here in the loop of Henle is where that's going to be regulated. The distal tubule has large waste products like urea and nitrogenous waste. So those are things that you want to get excreted. The anti-diuretic hormone will stimulate absorption of water if needed to further dilute or concentrate urine. So a diuretic is something that makes you pee, and something that makes you, so it dilutes your urine, so you get a lot of excess water in your urine. An anti-diuretic hormone will either turn on to concentrate your urine or turn off to, if it turns on, yes, it'll concentrate your urine, and then if it turns off, then it will dilute your urine, because it's going to either inhibit or it's going to possibly inhibit a diuretic of some kind. So the filtrate moves to the collecting ducts, which receive filtrate from many nephrons. So this collecting duct here is not just getting it from one nephron. There could be many nephrons all around it. And by the time the stuff gets here, for the most part, you should just have the stuff that's supposed to be in your urine. So all the waste, the urea, stuff that you don't want. But water can still be absorbed at this point to adjust concentration. The filtrate collecting in the renal pelvis then moves to the ureters, then on to the bladder. So here in the glomerulus, this is that ball of capillaries again in the beginning, is under very high blood pressure, and this is forcing all those fluids and solutes out of the bloodstream and into that glomerulus so they can filter it. So the kidneys filter the body's entire plasma about 60 times each day. The filtrate contains all plasma components except protein, so you should not have protein in your urine. You lose water, nutrients, and essential ions to become... it loses, so the filtrate loses water, nutrients, and essential ions. So that means that your urine should not have a ton of water, nutrients or essential ions. Those should go back into your bloodstream for the most part. The urine contains metabolic wastes and unneeded substances. Urine formation and the adjustment of blood composition involves 3 major processes. So you've got the blood being forced out at the glomerulus and filtered out. Certain things reabsorbed in those proximal tubules, the loop of Henle, the distal tubules, so different things are being reabsorbed at those parts. And then you have secretion, so what is ready to be excreted is secreted. The glomerulus is more efficient than any other capillary beds because its filtrate membrane is more permeable, so it's different than the capillaries you might find in your feet or your hands or some other place. The blood pressure is very high compared to most capillaries, and it has a higher net filtration pressure. Plasma proteins are not filtered and are used to maintain osmotic pressure of the blood. If the glomerulus filtration rate is too high, needed substances cannot be reabsorbed quickly enough and they'll end up being lost in the urine, which means if blood is rushing through too fast, then things end up not having time to be reabsorbed. So you might end up with things in your urine that aren't supposed to be there. If it's too low, then everything is reabsorbed, including the waste that should be in your urine. So this is controlled by both your nervous system and hormones that will stimulate the glomerulus, how much it absorbs, how much it filters, how much water is kept, all that kind of stuff. And can be affected by both stress and disease. Reabsorption, so all organic nutrients should be reabsorbed. Water and ions should be reabsorbed, and that's hormonally controlled. Reabsorption may be active, which requires ATP, or a passive process, which means a passive process is just diffusion, so it's going from wherever is high concentration to low concentration across the membrane. The pH and water level of the blood can be altered by the kidneys. So if you are dehydrated, the kidneys will absorb more water back into your bloodstream, leaving your urine a dark yellow color. Diuretics are substances that increase the amount of water loss in your urine. So high glucose levels carries water out with the glucose. For example, a diabetic who's got high glucose levels, their urine, this causes a diuretic type situation, so they can lose a lot of water and they can easily become dehydrated, and it eventually starts affecting their kidney function. Alcohol inhibits the release of the anti-diuretic hormone. So that ADH hormone is shut off, causing you to start losing a whole bunch of water, which is why you become easily dehydrated. Caffeine and most other diuretic drugs inhibit the sodium ion reabsorption, which causes, again, more water to not be reabsorbed into the bloodstream. So the characteristics of urine, it should generally be clear and transparent. It can be pale to deep yellow, and that's due to urochrome, the pigment. Concentrated urine will have a deeper yellow color. Drugs, vitamin supplements, and diet can change the color of urine. For example, if you eat a lot of beets, it can turn your urine pink, and asparagus can turn your urine green. Cloudy urine, however, may indicate an infection of the urinary tract, and you should definitely go see a doctor as soon as possible. So, what is not normally found in urine would be proteins, bilirubin, so that's that pigment that should be filtered out by your liver and would cause you to look jaundiced if you had too much of it. So that should be excreted out through other wastes. Red blood cells should not be in it, and ketones should not be in it. Stuff that can normally be found in urine would be urea, creatinine, uric acid, and certain solutes like sodium, potassium, and calcium. But high amounts of these solutes in there could indicate a disease.